will have what's trending after our guest here today, Ms. Funke Opeke, founder and CEO of MainOne, a broadband infrastructure service provider that has grown to become the leading provider of wholesale and enterprise connectivity and data center services across the West African region. MainOne continues to grow its footprint with major network interconnection facilities, extensive terrestrial fiber build-out, regional points of presence, and delivery of services into 10 countries in West Africa. Funke Opeke raised 3.2 million initial capital from friends and family. Welcome to the morning show.
Good morning. Good to see you.
This is so impressive. You raised 3.2 million from family.
But wasn't it actually $240 million?
Yes.
$240 million.
We started the 240 started with 3.2 million.
Okay.
From friends and family.
Wow.
And mentors. We eventually went from that 3.2 million to 240 million that we needed to launch the business and deploy our infrastructure.
That is so impressive.
Congratulations on what you've been able to do.
Thank you very much.
When you started, you said you were motivated by low internet connectivity in Nigeria. What's your assessment of the level of internet connectivity now in Nigeria?
The level of internet connectivity now, looking back, and it's 8 years, is certainly you feel the impact, but we're not where we should be. We've underperformed. When you look at the quality of access, when you look at the reach of the access, when you look at the cost of access, when you look at the pervasiveness of access for our young people in our schools, in delivering services to the ordinary Nigerian, we have not done as much as we could or that we expected when we set out deploying the infrastructure. So we're still working at it.
Wow, so you are one of the pioneers for ICT and telecoms in Nigeria. You built the first privately owned open access submarine cable. That's correct. What has been your challenges from then till now?
Well, when we started, we saw that the most significant or the largest infrastructure gap was the connectivity between Nigeria and indeed West Africa with the rest of the world. So we set out to build that submarine cable. And we had a growing mobile telephony market of presence and adoption in West Africa. And we thought the domestic distribution environment would scale up to match the availability of the international pipe, which was missing for the longest time. And so we put a really large international pipe in. And our biggest challenge has been domestic distribution. Up until today, we're using less than 10% of the capacity of our cable into Nigeria, being the largest country in West Africa, largest in sub-Saharan Africa, and the neighboring countries that we serve. So getting that capacity across the country to get to the people who require access to the internet, whose lives could be improved by access to the internet, has been the biggest challenge.
Well, I was going to ask you a question about that. The cable landed in Lagos, and Lagos seems to be your main base. But I mean, why have you not considered the possibility of going to the hinterland, since you say Nigeria is such a big market?
We are going to the hinterland, but Nigeria also has some unique challenges in terms of how infrastructure is being deployed. And you know, these things require a lot of capital and how you require that infrastructure. So one of the things you have in advanced markets is actually the concept of shared infrastructure. And on our submarine cable, that's why we call it open access, any operator, any retail operator can get access on our submarine cable. Our approach to domestic infrastructure in Nigeria has been proprietary. So everyone builds a small network to move their own traffic. And our mobile operators built networks to move their own traffic. And depending on the number of voice subscribers they had, the network was sized to meet their own proprietary requirement. So if they're in Ibadan, or if they're in Kano, or if they're in Maiduguri or Bawa, let's go into some secondary cities, they're the only ones who could provide service there because they have the exclusive infrastructure. And so we have not taken an approach to deploying shared infrastructure, which lowers costs, which allows you to deploy better quality infrastructure, which allows you to grow scale, which makes the return on investment such that makes the investment viable. And so what we have is a concentration in the high net worth areas, in the high wealth, the cities, the center cities where you can afford a multiplicity of infrastructure because everyone is deploying their own infrastructure. And to go into the areas that are secondary markets is just not economically viable. And so that's really what you have. And you have the areas that are most lucrative being overbuilt. So we need to figure out how we change that model to having more shared infrastructure, because that's the way it's done. If advanced economies like Singapore, like the UK, the United States, Australia are sharing infrastructure, on the GDP per capita we have in Nigeria, we cannot afford to get services to everyone without having a common framework to do that.
Well, I mean, in 2013,
Yes.
the Nigerian government launched a national broadband policy.
Yes.
And at the time, the song was that by 2018, we'll be able to have 30% penetration and all of that. But where are we today? Because you said 10%.
Yeah. Well, 10% of our international infrastructure, I believe broadband penetration in Nigeria as measured by the ITU is at 22%. Yes, but if you look back, have we implemented the broadband policy? So yes, the policy was developed in 2013, and I know that you just had Mrs. Omobola Johnson,
Yes.
Yes.
who was a champion of that policy and put it in place, and on the show earlier, and a lot of work was done towards getting the states to also collaborate with the federal regulatory agencies to enable the deployment of some of this infrastructure. Unfortunately, most elements of that plan have not been realized. And so I don't think things have changed much from where we were in 2013.
Well, I know you don't speak for government, but what happened to the proposed national backbone that was in the news at the time?
None has been created or built. And also there were plans to develop metro fiber networks. However, due to various challenges across the country, to the best of my knowledge, none of those networks have been implemented today.
Okay, for the benefit of our view, what are metro fiber networks?
Okay, so metro is, so if you bring a lot of capacity, the ability to move traffic,
Right.
to get your calls, your videos out to across the country, you need technology. So the most efficient technology in modern times to move a lot of information is fiber.
Okay.
So you have to really build fiber optics. You have to lay that infrastructure. Essentially, most times it involves digging the streets, laying pipes and ducts in which you can run this fiber optic cables that can carry that traffic close to the end users. So in order for us to have good broadband in Nigeria, you need fiber backbone. We talk about backbone, which is fiber interconnecting the cities.
Okay.
You need fiber down all the major commercial areas or residential areas of the city. So it brings the traffic close to the consumer. In some instances, for businesses and homes in high net worth districts, you're actually taking that fiber straight into the home or the business. In other areas, you're taking the fiber to the tower so that when people are accessing internet or data through or video content through their phones, they can get to the closest tower, and then from there, which is radio, obviously free space because your mobile phone is not physically connected.
Correct.
And then from there, all that traffic is aggregated onto these fibers, which can carry a lot of traffic, and they move it to the target destination. And that's why the quality of service when you travel in advanced markets is so much better because they have a lot more of this infrastructure in place. We don't have that infrastructure. In addition, the cost of that infrastructure is quite expensive because of the challenges in doing business here, be it electricity that you have to provide at those various stations, be it the logistics of servicing the equipment, be it importation, and the fact that most of the technology inputs are imported, so you need foreign exchange, and we know what devaluation has done to our market. Yes. So there are quite a few challenges in really bringing technology and internet better quality at low cost to more people. And there's simply no way around it. You have to deploy more infrastructure.
Right. How much support do you get from government in terms of many of the things you have to deal with? Right of way, community relations. Do you get any incentive?
You know, government is broad and varied. I mean, so when you say government, yes, we do get
government at all levels.
We get different pockets and at different levels. The regulator has been very supportive, the NCC, in working with us truly and the other infracos, because we are licensed as infraco to deploy wholesale fiber in Lagos as an example. So in working to cut through the red tape at various levels of government to enable more of that infrastructure to get deployed. But, you know, it's the multiple layers you have to go through. It's the reality that any agency of government, almost any agency of government, can stop work or say no or put a hindrance to the deployment of that infrastructure, not recognizing the value that that infrastructure brings. When we deploy infrastructure, I tell people, we're raising capital, we're putting capital at risk. We're employing Nigerians, we're bringing services to Nigerian businesses and schools and citizens that could make their lives better, that could make their banking easier, access to healthcare, access to information for schools. But there's not that recognition. Everyone just says they're spending money and something's got to give there. So those are the challenges, everything from importing, what you require, the time it takes, the cost of getting it first into Nigeria and then to the remote areas where you want to deploy the technology, training and having the skills to do that. So those are some of the challenges. So government has been supportive, but we are not immune from the challenges that every other business faces in the country, and we have to deal with that as well.
Your company is not only here in Lagos, also in Accra as well, correct?
Yes, we're in other parts of West Africa.
Cameroon.
And Cameroon.
Yes, and Cameroon.
So what are the different challenges you face in regards to like Nigeria as opposed to Accra? I lived in Accra before, and I see like a lot of things work a lot better here.
There's less red tape.
Yeah.
What we're finding across West Africa, and we're currently also doing a major expansion into Côte d'Ivoire and Senegal, is that there's less red tape that we have to get through. That you can make rational arguments for deployment of infrastructure and get ready support. That things are easier to achieve and get done. So it's easier to get results there when you put in the kind of effort and capital we bring than it is in Nigeria. It's just a little easier. They're smaller markets, so Nigeria still remains the holy grail in that sense, but definitely a lot more straightforward to get things done.
Okay.
What's your assessment of the quality of access to technology by SMEs? Only earlier, a few minutes earlier, Mobola Johnson was saying, well, that's really the engine of economic growth.
Yeah, a lot of our SMEs could truly benefit from more access to technology. For a lot of them now, the reach or the quality of what they have is not good enough, and the costs are considerably high for them to afford. And we believe that enabling SMEs with tech will only make them more productive, will expand their reach in terms of their marketing efforts, would help some of their logistical challenges, because perhaps some arrangements could be made online that would typically require physical travel or engagement. Technologies boost productivity generally across the globe, and we do have a lot of SMEs here. Also, when you look at things like the government's tax drive, both tax on goods and services as well as income tax, bringing more of those people into the formal economy can only be good for Nigeria. So, but the challenge is we have an SME product that our company launched a few years ago, but infrastructure is still the biggest challenge.
What is that SME product?
It's called SME in a Box.
Okay.
And what it does is provide a suite of services, connectivity, voice communication, so data connectivity, access to the internet, access to voice services, access to office automation, cloud computing tools, so they can efficiently run their businesses, Wi-Fi within the office place. So it's a suite of services that's scaled to enable SMEs become more productive. But we can only deploy it where we have our infrastructure or affordable infrastructure to leverage, because the price points for SMEs are so low. So such services would work if you could deploy on a large-scale basis and you have a lot of SMEs adopt and the costs come down on an individual SME basis. So that's some of the challenges. We just don't have those open, shared infrastructure solutions and low-cost solutions that we're able to leverage to make it effective for small businesses.
Well, now that MainOne Cable is well established and known as a brand, do you find it easier now to raise capital for your
capital is
expansion initiatives?
Yeah, no, capital is not a challenge. Putting it to work and getting the return is. So we're responsible custodians of capital. We've been responsible custodians of capital. So to be honest, access to capital is not an issue. Cost of capital, because of the risk profile of Nigeria, and also the foreign exchange issues. So domestic capital is very expensive. International capital is fraught with risk because you face an exchange risk, exchange rate risk, but access is less of an issue for us.
Well, I would have loved to ask you a few more questions, but we don't have much time.
Right.
Questions about sustainability, and then who is your backup? You seem to be the only one we know in MainOne Cable.
So far.
Oh, no. There's a large team. I couldn't be doing this alone. More than 400 people in the company across West Africa and some in Europe. I certainly hope that you are seeing more of our team in the media and engaging our customers as well.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
That's all from Funke Opeke. When we return, Segun Awolowo, the Director General of the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, will be joining us to talk about the council and the role of the government in creating an environment for export. Don't go away.